Mira lived in a small, quiet village tucked between rolling hills and dense forests. Her home was modest, a wooden cottage at the edge of a narrow path that led straight to the lake. The lake was her escape, her quiet sanctuary from the world's weight. Every morning, before the sun rose, she would take her small wooden boat and row across the still waters, letting the mist curl around her like a secret veil. The villagers whispered about the lake. They said it had moods, sometimes calm and reflective, sometimes restless and dark. Mira never paid much attention. To her, it was just a stretch of water, a place where she could think, breathe, and be alone. She liked the gentle creak of the boat's wood, the rhythmic splash of the oars, and the way the morning fog made everything feel otherworldly. Her journey was routine. Every day, she crossed to the opposite shore, where a narrow trail led to a patch of wildflowers and the remnants of old farmland. She would spend the morning wandering, tending to small herbs she was growing, or just sitting under an ancient oak tree, listening to the wind rustle through the leaves. But lately, something had begun to feel different. It started with subtle signs. A shadow that moved under the water. A ripple in the mist that didn't match the wind. Then, a strange smell, earthy and wet, carried over the lake. Mira tried to brush it off, blaming her imagination. Yet each day, her heart felt a little heavier as she rowed across the water. One morning, Mira noticed something unusual. The sun had just begun to peek over the hills, casting golden streaks across the misty lake. She was halfway across when she spotted it, a dark shape just beneath the water. She slowed her boat, squinting. At first, she thought it was a fallen tree, maybe an old branch from the shoreline forests. But as she drew closer, she realized it was too straight, too structured. It wasn't wood from the forest, it was man-made. A roof. The edge of a roof, just barely breaking the water's surface. Her heart skipped a beat. She had crossed this lake every day for years, yet she had never seen this before. And yet, looking closer, she remembered old stories from the village. Tales of a house that had once stood on the far shore decades ago, long before the lake had flooded parts of the valley. People said the house had been abandoned in a hurry, the owners vanished overnight. No one knew why, and no one had ever gone near the water to look for it. Mira felt a shiver run down her spine. She rowed closer, her hands gripping the oars tightly. The roof was definitely real, its tiles darkened by decades underwater. Moss clung stubbornly to the edges, and water lapped against the structure with soft, eerie sounds. What is this?" she whispered to herself. Her curiosity overpowered her fear. She tied the boat to a submerged tree trunk and leaned closer to inspect the rooftop. The water around it was surprisingly clear, revealing hints of walls beneath the surface. It was a small house, no bigger than a fisherman's cabin, but completely submerged. Mira's mind raced. How had she never noticed this? Every day she had crossed the lake, yet this hidden secret had stayed buried until now. She felt an odd mix of fear and excitement. There was something about the mystery that called to her, a whisper of danger and discovery combined. She spent the rest of the morning circling the sunken house, observing from the boat. The structure seemed intact, almost frozen in time. And then she saw it, something moving inside, behind the broken window frame. At first, she thought her eyes were playing tricks on her. But the movement was real. A shadow, fleeting but definite. Something, or someone, was inside. Mira's breath caught. She had heard of spirits haunting abandoned places, of things that shouldn't exist in the daylight. But she didn't believe in ghosts. Could it be an animal? Or a person trapped somehow? The rest of the day was a blur. Mira returned home, her mind spinning. She couldn't stop thinking about the sunken house, the roof that had surfaced, and the shadow she had seen. That night, she barely slept. Every sound from the lake made her jump. The lapping water against the shore, the rustle of trees in the wind, the distant call of birds waking in the early hours. By morning, she had made a decision. She would return to the lake. She needed to know what was inside the house. She could not shake the feeling that something important, something terrifying, was waiting for her. The next day, Mira took a different route. She brought gloves, a rope, and a small lantern. As she approached the sunken structure, she felt a mix of excitement and dread. The shadow had not been an illusion. Something had been moving beneath the water. She tied her boat again and climbed onto the sloping roof. The tiles were slippery and covered in algae, but she managed to find a stable spot. From here, she could see more details. Windows, partially broken, and what appeared to be a small door. The water inside the house glimmered faintly, reflecting the morning light. Mira leaned closer to the door. She noticed scratches on the wood, deep and irregular, as if someone or something had been trapped inside. Her heart pounded. Who had lived here? Who or what was trapped beneath the lake for so long? And then, she heard it, a sound muffled but unmistakable. A soft, desperate tapping. Someone, tapping against the walls, trying to get out. Fear gripped her. She froze, listening. The tapping continued, rhythmic and insistent. Her mind screamed for her to row back, to leave, to forget what she had seen. But her curiosity anchored her in place. "Hello," she called, her voice trembling. Silence followed, except for the faint dripping of water and the soft tapping. Myra's chest tightened. The shadow she had seen the day before moved again, more clearly this time. Something was there, alive, and it was aware of her presence. The rest of the morning passed in tense observation. Mira noted the strange arrangement of the roof tiles, the moss-covered walls, and the eerie calm of the lake around the sunken house. She knew one thing for certain. This was no ordinary discovery. The lake had hidden this secret for decades, and now it had chosen to reveal itself to her. As she rowed back to the shore, Mira couldn't shake the feeling that the lake was watching her, that the sunken house was waiting for the moment she would dare to enter. Her routine was over. The lake was no longer a sanctuary. It had become a doorway, a threshold to a world she didn't yet understand, and one that could shatter her life completely. By the time she reached her cottage, Myra's mind was racing with plans, questions, and fears. She knew that tomorrow, she would return. She had to know what was beneath the surface. That night, the wind carried strange sounds across the lake, almost like whispers, faint but deliberate. Mira couldn't sleep, her thoughts tangled with the mysteries of the submerged house. What had been hidden for so long? And why had it revealed itself now? Little did Mira know, the roof that had surfaced was only the beginning. The terrifying secret beneath the lake was far greater than she could imagine, and the moment she uncovered it, nothing in her life would ever be the same. The next morning, Mira woke before dawn. Her mind had not rested. Her thoughts circled endlessly around the sunken house. She dressed quietly, careful not to wake anyone in her small cottage, and carried her supplies, gloves, rope, a small lantern, and a notebook. This time, she felt a strange mixture of fear and determination. She knew she could not ignore the mystery any longer. The lake looked different in the early morning light. Mist clung to the water's surface, curling and twisting like ghostly fingers. Mira rowed with steady, silent strokes, her boat cutting through the calm waters. Every splash echoed in the stillness, making her heart beat faster. As she approached the sunken house, she felt an odd sense of familiarity, as if the lake itself had been waiting for her arrival. The roof tiles glistened wetly under the first rays of the sun. Mira tied her boat carefully and climbed onto the slippery roof, her hands gripping the mossy tiles. She took a deep breath and peered inside through the broken door. The water was shallow near the edges but deepened toward the center. She could see the outline of walls and furniture submerged just below the surface. And then she noticed something that made her stomach turn, a human-shaped figure, still and pale, sitting in the water in the corner of the house. Myra's breath caught. She could not tell if the figure was alive or a corpse. The water distorted the shape, making it hard to see clearly. Her first instinct was to run, to flee from this horrifying discovery. But curiosity anchored her in place. She had to know. Carefully, she climbed down into the water, her boots sinking slightly into the soft mud at the floor of the lake. The figure moved slightly, turning its head. Mira froze. The face was gaunt and pale, eyes wide open and unblinking, staring straight at her. Mister, she stammered, unsure if she was speaking to a living person or a long-forgotten ghost. The figure did not respond with words. Instead, it reached out with trembling hands, motioning her closer. Mira hesitated but felt compelled to approach. Something about the way the figure moved suggested fear, desperation, and a silent plea. Closer now, she could see more details. The person, a man, young, perhaps in his 30s, was wet, covered in mud, and shivering. His clothes were tattered, soaked through, and layered with years of grime. His lips moved, whispering sounds Mira could not understand. "What happened here?" she whispered. How did you get trapped?" The man shook his head slowly. He seemed unable to speak. Mira realized that even if he wanted to tell her, he might have forgotten how. She noticed a notebook floating beside him, pages waterlogged but intact. She grabbed it carefully and opened the first page. The writing was faded, but legible. It spoke of a house built in secrecy, far from the village, where the family had hidden something valuable. Something they had promised to keep safe at all costs. There were mentions of threats from outsiders, fear of discovery, and a growing panic as water from the nearby lake began to rise. The last entries were frantic, the handwriting jagged. "We must hide it. The lake will protect it. If anyone finds this, they will know. The secret, the secret." Myra's heart pounded. The man's presence here, the submerged house, and these words hinted at something far larger than a simple old building. Whatever had been hidden was important, perhaps dangerous. As she tried to piece together the story, she noticed something strange in the water. A small trapdoor, partially covered in mud near the far wall, leading down into darkness. Mira felt a chill run through her. The house had a basement, hidden beneath the lake's surface. The secret might still be there. The man reached toward the trapdoor, pointing urgently. His eyes seemed to plead with her. "Go down, see it, understand it." Mira hesitated. The water around the house was cold, murky, and the depth of the trapdoor was unknown. Yet, she could not ignore the silent command. She tied a rope around her waist to secure herself, took a deep breath, and lifted the trapdoor. Darkness stretched below her, swallowing the faint light of the morning. Myra's lantern revealed a narrow staircase leading down into the murky depths. Water trickled down the steps, and the air smelled of damp earth and decay. Carefully, she descended, her hands gripping the wet stone walls. At the bottom, the space opened into a small chamber. Her lantern flickered across walls lined with shelves, boxes, and crates. Everything was coated in years of silt, but it was clear that someone had intentionally stored these items here. And then she saw it, a chest, locked with a heavy rusted padlock. The man beside her tried to gesture, pointing to the chest and then to the notebook. Mira realized that this chest held the secret mentioned in the writings. She could almost feel the weight of generations pressing down on it. Using a small crowbar she had brought, she pried the padlock open. The chest creaked as it gave way, and Mira lifted the lid slowly. Inside were stacks of papers, bundles of old photographs, and several small, carefully wrapped objects. The first paper she picked up contained detailed maps, strange symbols, and cryptic notes. They seemed to document something hidden, something powerful, that the family had feared revealing. Her hands shook as she looked through the photographs. Faces of unknown people, posed around the very house she stood in, some with expressions of fear, others with a strange intensity. It was as if the family had been guarding this place not just from the lake, but from the world itself. The man suddenly gestured toward a bundle wrapped in cloth. Mira carefully unwrapped it, revealing a small carved box, intricate and delicate, with strange inscriptions she could not read. As she lifted it, a sudden shiver ran through her body. The air grew colder, and the faint sound of dripping water echoed around her. Then, something even more shocking happened. The man whispered, a faint sound that barely carried. "It awakens." Mira froze. The carved box vibrated slightly in her hands, as if something inside it was alive. The air in the chamber seemed to thicken. Shadows flickered unnaturally on the walls, and the soft murmur of water became louder, more insistent. Panic threatened to overtake her curiosity. She glanced at the man, whose wide eyes seemed to confirm her fear. This secret was not just a family mystery. It was dangerous. Something had been sleeping beneath the lake for decades, and now it was stirring. Mira quickly replaced the box in the chest and closed the lid. The room fell silent again, though the sense of unease lingered. She knew she could not stay long. Carefully, she retraced her steps up the staircase, climbed back into the house, and finally emerged into the cold morning light. The man followed her, stepping into the shallow water beside the boat. For the first time, Mira realized that he was not just a ghost of the past. He was a guardian, trapped by the lake's secret, waiting for someone to uncover it. His eyes met hers, conveying gratitude, fear, and a silent warning. The danger was not gone. Mira rowed back to shore, the sunken house behind her now, appearing quiet and calm. But she knew the truth. The secret beneath the lake was alive, waiting, and it had chosen her as the next to face it. Her life had changed forever in those few hours, and there was no going back. As she reached the village, she realized that the lake's mystery had become hers. Every ripple, every shadow, every sound could hide something more. And the carved box, though still beneath the water, seemed to call to her in dreams, a reminder that some secrets refuse to stay hidden. The nights after her first discovery were restless for Mira. Sleep eluded her, replaced by visions of the sunken house, the carved box, and the pale man whose eyes seemed to follow her everywhere. The lake no longer felt like a calm sanctuary. It had become a presence, watching, waiting, judging. She returned home and locked the doors, but even in the safety of her cottage, she could hear whispers. At first, she thought they were in her mind, faint echoes of the tapping, the dripping water, the murmurs she had heard in the sunken house. But as the nights passed, the sounds grew louder, more insistent, like someone, or something, trying to communicate. Unable to resist, Mira decided she had to return. She needed answers, and the carved box called to her. Its strange, intricate carvings burned into her memory, and she could not ignore the pull. She packed her bag with essentials, gloves, lantern, rope, and a notebook to record everything. Her hands trembled with a mix of fear and anticipation. At dawn, she rowed across the lake, the mist curling around her boat like a protective shroud. The sunken house loomed ahead, its dark roof peeking through the water as if it had been waiting for her return. The man from before emerged from the water near the roof, nodding silently. His presence reassured her, yet also reminded her of the danger that lay ahead. Mira climbed onto the roof carefully, the tiles slippery beneath her boots. She descended into the water again and made her way to the trapdoor. With the lantern in hand, she entered the hidden basement. The air was cold and damp, carrying the scent of earth and water. The chest awaited her, undisturbed, as if it had been waiting for her hands to touch it again. She opened it carefully and lifted the carved box. This time, she felt a subtle vibration, stronger than before. The box seemed alive, resonating with energy she could not understand. Her pulse quickened. She opened the lid. Inside was a small, dark crystal, smooth and cold. Its surface shimmered with an inner light that pulsed gently, almost like a heartbeat. Myra's breath caught. The crystal radiated power, ancient, deep, and terrifying. She felt a wave of fear wash over her, but also an irresistible curiosity. The man beside her reached out, trying to grab her hand. His eyes pleaded silently. Don't open it fully, they seemed to say. But Myra's fascination overrode her fear. She touched the crystal with her fingers. The moment her skin made contact, the air shifted. The basement seemed to shiver. Water rippled unnaturally, and shadows stretched along the walls like dark tendrils. Suddenly, a vision overwhelmed her mind. She saw the house as it had been decades ago, filled with people who had lived in fear of the crystal. She saw the lake rising around it, swallowing the home as a warning to the world. She saw the family hiding the crystal, whispering that it should never be disturbed. And then she saw the consequences: destruction, despair, and the awakening of something beyond comprehension. Mira gasped and pulled her hand back. The crystal pulsed again, brighter this time. The man's eyes widened in panic. "It is waking," he whispered. "You have to leave. Now." Before she could respond, the water around the house surged violently. The basement walls shook as if the lake itself were alive, responding to her touch. Shadows moved across the ceiling, stretching downward, forming shapes that twisted and writhed. Mira stumbled back, nearly dropping the crystal. The man grabbed her arm, dragging her toward the trapdoor. "Go! Before it comes for us!" he shouted, his voice trembling. Mira obeyed, climbing through the doorway and emerging into the cold morning light. The lake around her churned, dark waves rising higher than she had ever seen. Myra's boat rocked violently as she climbed in, the man following. The crystal, still in her hand, pulsed with a heartbeat-like rhythm, each pulse sending shivers through her entire body. She rowed with all her strength, the lake fighting her at every stroke. Water splashed into the boat, soaking her and making the oars heavy. Behind her, the sunken house seemed to stir. The roof trembled, water cascading off its edges, as if it were alive. Shadows flickered across the surface, forming shapes that resembled twisted figures, reaching out for her. Myra's heart pounded. She had never felt fear like this before, a primal, bone-deep terror. Finally, after what felt like hours, she reached the shore. She scrambled out of the boat, gasping for air. The man followed, standing beside her silently. They watched as the lake calmed, the sunken house now appearing still and quiet once more. But Mira knew it was not calm. The crystal had awakened something ancient beneath the water, and its presence would not be ignored. She held the crystal tightly, feeling its cold pulse against her palm. The man spoke at last. "This was never meant to be found," he said softly. "It was meant to sleep, to stay hidden beneath the lake forever. You have changed everything." Mira looked at him, eyes wide. What does it do?" she asked. He shook his head. "No one knows for certain. But power like this, it does not forgive mistakes. It does not wait for anyone. You have awakened it, and now it will follow you." Myra's mind reeled. She realized that the discovery she had been so drawn to was far more dangerous than she could have imagined. The lake, the sunken house, the crystal, all of it was connected to a force beyond her understanding. And now, it was awake. The days that followed were tense. Mira could feel the presence of the crystal even when she placed it in a safe box at home. Shadows moved differently in her cottage, whispers echoed faintly through empty rooms, and the air seemed heavier, charged with unseen energy. She knew she could not face this alone. The man from the lake had stayed nearby, helping her understand the crystal's power and the history of the sunken house. He explained that the family had built the house to protect the crystal, to keep it submerged until the world was ready, if it would ever be ready. By disturbing it, Mira had broken that delicate balance. Nightmares plagued her sleep. In her dreams, the lake rose, swallowing the village. The crystal pulsed, glowing with an eerie light. Shadows reached out from the water, dragging shapes into the depths. She would wake up drenched in sweat, heart pounding, but the visions persisted, growing more vivid with each night. Mira realized that she could not ignore the crystal. It was part of her now, its power entwined with her life. She could feel it calling, whispering secrets she could not fully comprehend. And deep down, she knew that the real challenge was only beginning. The terrifying secret beneath the lake was awake, and it would not rest until it had completed its purpose.